welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is young African American professionals, and we're fortunate to have here to talk about young African American professionals, Pastor Kay Walker and Mr. Brandon Van Leer. And of course, I think, Pastor Walker, let me welcome you and Van Leer to a new season in a real sense, and to know that this is Mr. Van Leer's first time being with us. But as you know, and as you've probably told him, you've been with us for the last 25 years. And so I think that our audience is quite familiar with Pastor Kay Walker. And of course, what we'll have you to do is to make some statements in reference to your background, education, and experience. And Mr. Van Leer can then make the same information in reference to his situation. And we'll be out of this first 6-minute segment. And then we can talk about young professionals and talking specifically about Van Leer and you as a professional. Let's do it from that perspective.
Well, thanks a lot, Dr. Haney. Good morning once again. Thanks for having us on the show. Very informative show here. Comments. I think Pastor Kelvin L. Walker, born right here in Nashville, Tennessee. Good parents. Raised me right, taught me right. You led me and steered me in the right direction. Of course, I was one of those hard-headed ones, and I went off in the wrong direction. Raised up in the public school system and stuff up until a certain point where when I decided to learn, I would learn. When I didn't want to learn, I didn't want to learn. So it got to a point where I was just a bad guy, at that time, and eventually I got put out of the public school system, got in trouble, ended up shooting a guy. And Judge Jenkins, Richard Jenkins, in the juvenile court system, decided that I would be better off if I went to the military. So I went into the United States Navy at the age of 17, stayed in there a little while, and got out. Pursued a GED through a OIC, Opportunities Industrialization Center. Got that 6-month program there. Got that GED, then pursued some studies at Tennessee State University. Wanted to become a fashion designer. But at the time, Dr. Haney, I was caught up in drugs. My drug addiction, heroin addiction would not allow me to stay in school. So I ended up bailing out of school and everything, and ended up incarcerated in the state prison system because of some various number of crimes that I committed, and got out of the prison system, of course, unreformed, unchanged. And but in 1986, on August 24th, 1986, God divinely intervened in my life, man. And he stopped the 17+ year drug addiction, called me into ministry, and that's been what I've been doing for the last almost 33 years now. And I'm just delighted to be on your show and to bring this young brother on the show that I just recently met, man, that's aspiring to do some great things in the professional realm in terms of entrepreneurship, and just let him tell you something about himself.
What about you, Mr. Van Leer?
I'm here from Nashville, Tennessee, born and raised. My parents are both from Kentucky. My sister, she's here. I attended East Nashville Magnet School, and after that I went to Tennessee State University on a scholarship, a full academic scholarship. I did not know I was going to get that, but thanks to my guidance counselor, she put my name in the lottery for it, and I just so happened to get the scholarship. And that was a blessing for me, from my parents, and I had to pay for school and all that. So I went to school, wasn't sure what I was going to major in, but I knew I wanted to do something with graphic design, and I wanted to do something with arts. And so I put the two together, and I just came up with graphic design. And then after that, 4 years passed by. I joined Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. I was a bachelor's for a year, which is a president, Greek term for president. And then I graduated last year, and so now I'm on my own. I'm trying to make a career out of my graphic design, a career out of my artwork, and now I'm here just pushing forward.
Mm-hmm. And so, Pastor Walker, you serve as a mentor for a large number of young people in a real sense. And what do you see in this young man in terms of why it's important what he's doing?
Well, Dr. Haney, I'm inspired because, a lot of times, how it is when we turn our television sets on, Dr. Haney, and the first thing, a lot of times we see is the negative news stories about something, some young black man has done, some crime that, have been committed. And I'm first to say that when I was committing crimes, I was guilty. I did it, you know what I'm saying? And I should have been arrested and should have been incarcerated when I did it. But at the same time, it seems like crimes are committed, but the crimes that the black male commits seem like they're more highlighted, they're more exaggerated, more expressions are lent to it. And it sends a bad signal to the community, to society, that says that we're all bad, you know, and that there's none of us that are good. So, and when you encounter young black males, you know, of course, I know this is a myth. I know this is stupidity. And for somebody to even think like that, you know, you got to check, you know, wonder where their thinking has been derived from in the first place. But at the same time, when you see a young black man, you know, doing what he's doing, inspiring to grow, man, it's inspiring.
Okay, so what we'll do, we'll take our first commercial break, and we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short break. Van Leer. This will give you an opportunity to talk about some of the things that you'd like to talk about. I need some water. Yeah.
Now, what picture is that one right there?
That's Barack Obama.
Oh, man.
I only had one easel, so.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so this will give you an opportunity, Ms. Van Leer.
Maybe after you get a shot of that one, you can probably put that other. She could probably put that other one up there.
Mm-hmm. So.
You got one of Mr. Obama there too.
Yes, sir. That's Barack Obama.
Oh, see, you see that? I didn't see that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just flipped around. I only had brought one easel.
And so you did one of Malcolm X, and you've got.
I have a collection about 15 portraits or so.
Oh yeah. Well, you talk about that. You know, tell us about what you're doing and why it's important in terms of what you're doing, and especially why you are concerned with these African American historical figures. You know, Malcolm X and et cetera, and some of the others that you have as images.
Okay.
How you got into artwork and all of that stuff.
Take that much to get me a drink of water.
So I'll talk about that. And I'll talk about my parents my dad and my sister are very artistic. And I grew up in an artistic household. So
great, man. Yeah, talk about all of that, because it shows your roots, man, and what you growed up out of, you know.
And so this 8-minute segment, Mr. Van Leer, now what do I do with this? He'll be back. He can't move until he get over there anyway.
Yeah, because a lot of people talk about the environments, our environments and stuff like that, and how
Put it somewhere.
when they talk about how
Just set it there.
they always talk about how the negative environment impacts us. They don't talk about how the positive environment impacts us.
Okay,
So
this
when
is
you
the
talk
second
about
segment of this show, right?
Yes, sir. Second segment.
if I messed up.
that.
Thank you and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. We're talking about young African American professionals, and Pastor Walker and Mr. Brandon Van Leer are here both to give us some information in reference to some of the challenges of young African American professionals, as well as some of the works of young African American professionals. Let's talk about you, Mr. Van Leer, to have you to make some statements in reference to what you're doing in reference to your art, and explain to a large number of folks as to what it means to be what do you call it, a graphics designer. Talk about that and give some examples.
Well, I give my credit to my parents. I was raised in an artistic household. My dad, he had done theater his whole life, so he does Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. He also does music as well, Little Richard and stuff like that. And my sister, she's very artistic as well. And then my mom, she's more on the organization side. So I took those skills, and I think growing up in that household has kind of pushed me to an artistic sense. And so now I use my abilities, my God-given talent that I realized, and I use it to highlight the black community. I have a collection of about 15 portraits highlighting the black community, from Malcolm X to Barack Obama to Maya Angelou, a lot of people who I see as good role models for us, and I don't think they're highlighted enough. And I think it's very significant that I'm black, I'm African American, highlighting these African American people. And I just want to give a good impact, a good role models for the children. And also, I'm still young, so I think it makes it's more coming from me since I'm the same age as some of the kids who are messing up and doing this and that. And so, using my platform, I want to be able to give a positive role model for people my age, people younger, and just be able to help in all sense I can.
It's also important, I think, Mr. Van Leer, to demonstrate that what a graphics designer is and how folks might be able to become a graphics designer and the importance of it. Why don't you say something about that, young black professionals, Pastor Walker?
You know, one thing I do want to say something about that's interesting to me is that, Dr. Haney, you know, we always talk about our environment, you know, and how our environment impacts us and stuff like that. But when you look at people talking about that, it's always from a negative stance. You very seldom hear it, and I'm gonna put it like this. You very seldom hear it spoken of from a positive stance when you're making reference to a young African-American male. It's always the negative. You know, you hear somebody, when a young African-American male gets in trouble or something, what the first thing they go about? Well, it starts in the home. It starts in the home. You know, and he didn't have any home training. The parents wasn't right, or this or that, or something like that, reflecting upon the home environment and then the environment immediately in the community that they grew up in. But now he's talking about an environment where all of his parents are all artistic and stuff like that, and it sounds like that he come from a very good family and from a very positive environment that impacted him in a positive way. So therefore, he starts off on this course of life, living life, looking not for the negative, but for the positive as a result of being rooted and grounded in some positive soil. And that's what, you know, that's what steps out to me, you know. And, you know, the artwork, man, you know, when I was younger, you know, I used to like to draw, man. I would draw these cartoon characters and stuff like that. But when I got caught up in the heroin and the drugs and stuff like that, I don't know where my little skills, my little talent went, man. It just went out the window, man. It just left, you know. I had a guy about a couple of weeks ago tell me, man, you know, maybe if you just sit down and just sit patiently and, you know, and just do it, it may come back to you. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I don't know. I just, you know, it just went away, you know. But to see, you know, this young brother here, man, that's not only got the talent, the God-given gift to sit there and to draw and to do what he's doing, but to reach out with it, to seek to excel and to grow in it. And not only that, but to reach out and to highlight, you know, the things that's going on, the people that represent positive things in the African-American community, people like Malcolm X, Barack Obama, Maya Angelou, and there's so many others that, you know, he haven't even named all the portraits that he have. But, man, just looking at his artwork of Malcolm, man, boy.
And I was thinking that, too, in a real sense, Mr. Van Leer, that to come up with a series of artists, I mean, a series of individuals that you've presented by way of your designs. What were some of the organizational principles behind these individuals? Excuse me. For example, the ones that you've demonstrated today, they are part of a larger series of 8 or 12 more. What were some of the organizational principles in terms of why did this individual make it and who made it and who didn't make it? Do it from that perspective.
Okay, well, I'll talk about my first portrait. It was of Ice Cube. It was after I saw the movie Straight Outta Compton. I know the movie wasn't family oriented, but it showed me how Ice Cube has gone from this environment and he's grown himself into what he is today. He's a positive role model now. He's a producer, he's a father, he's an actor, so he's really established and he's been resilient and he's persisted through all these acts as a child or when he was younger. And I think that's really important, is to keep pushing on, be persistent and push through anything. And then Barack Obama, the first black president, and that's just something you have to highlight no matter what. I also have Maya Angelou, a black poet, and a lot of females, a lot of women look up to her inspiration. I've done Michelle Obama, and right now she has her book Becoming. She's doing tours. She's the role model for black women, for young women. And I think that's really important to highlight people of that stature and just not any everybody. But I think there's a select people that I do, is people who I respect, who other people respect, who are African American, and people who are just positive role models to the community.
Well, now, how do you reproduce these items? We've got about a minute and a half here. How do you reproduce them, and what do you do? Do you make them for what, to sell, or to what? What is that aspect of it?
Well, for the process is first I graph it, and to graph it is make the small picture larger, and my medium is charcoal and graphite, and then I also have prints available. I have originals available. My original size is 18 by 24 right now, which is about this big, and so I've gone larger. My newest piece is 30 by 44, which is Michael Jackson, who was another prominent person in the Black community.
And so you've got all of these individuals, and you've given various designs, and you've got them framed, and
Yes, sir.
people can have access. Where can we've got about 26 seconds. Where can they see these designs outside of this particular show?
My website is Leer, my last name vanleerarts.myportfolio.com. And also on Instagram, I'm at vanleer_theartist.com.
Very good. And so what we'll do, we'll take our second commercial break, and we'll be back with you following this very, very short commercial break. Whatever you want to talk about.
What, a business, you know?
Said if you want, we already got a few shots of this one.
Yeah.
Swap
That's
out there.
okay. What I was wanting to do.
This is the Barack Obama one.
Actually, they got you to do that picture, that official portrait. They got somebody to do it, it didn't look right. They
Oh,
should
yeah.
got him to do that.
Uh-huh.
I didn't like it. That looks more like it right there.
So they can see that on the.
Is that one good?
So you can do graphic, when you do graphic design, I guess explain exactly what that is. Do you do does that got anything to do with websites or anything like that?
I'm working towards that, but it's an aspect of graphic design.
Oh, okay.
But it's just logos, flyers, all the visual aspect of businesses.
Okay, so that's what you need to let people
Yeah,
know.
so we got
you do
10
that
minutes
kind of
and-
stuff,
and-
and then let them know. You can throw a number out there and stuff, because people see that, man. They gonna want to.
yeah, it
They
is.
gonna want to contact you. That's some good work, man. People you use self portraits of people. and
I've
stuff?
done a couple of family portraits for a kid had it for their parents' anniversary or family portraits.
Yeah,
or-
that's,
See, that's the information you want to put out there, man, and then put your number out there, man, so people can contact you, get you some business. You ain't got to tell them on TV how much it costs. Tell them when they call you.
Yeah.
You know?
That's the goal, is to get them to contact me.
Yeah.
and so now you want to talk about what you do? Thank you, and welcome back to the final segment of the show for today. We're talking to Pastor Walker and Van Leer. And of course, Van Leer, I hesitated because I was not exactly sure that we wanted to talk about what we're about to talk about. But what I would like for you to do is to give us some information as a graphic designer. What are some of the challenges that you see within that profession, and what are some of the outcomes that you anticipate in terms of doing what you want to do? And so you start us off by giving us that information. Pastor Walker will also give us some information in reference to that. Talk about it from that perspective.
Well, graphic design is creating logos, creating flyers, creating visuals for a business. It's the branding. It's the first thing that your customers or your audience is going to see. And so it's very important to have visuals that's going to be eye-catching and keep people interested. And I think that's why I think my business is so important. And being black, it's a lot of people in that profession are not black. And so I think my goal is to create a graphic design firm. And so at that, I'll be able to employ other black people and other African Americans in a creative sense. And we all can have our own business where we can offer these services to create logos, flyers, visuals, branding, website design, anything like that. And right now I have a group called Creators Alley. We do, I do the visuals, they do photography and videography, and we offer all those services right now. My business called Resilient Media, Rezilient Media, and that's where I do the graphic design services.
Mm-hmm. And so if people wanted to design something, they want a logo or whatever, they come to you and give you the idea in terms of what they want, and you create that for them. Is that what we're saying in reference?
Sometimes they have an idea, sometimes they're like, hey, this is my name, can you create a visual for it? And so I might create maybe 3 or 4 different concepts, and I let them pick from that, and then we'll go with colors, we'll go with this, and then from the logo, we'll create the rest of the branding. So everything you want to have is to look similar. You want your logo to match your flyers to match your website, and you want everything to be connected color-wise, font-wise, and just so everything can come together and people will recognize your business.
And so, Pastor Walker, you've been involved in that kind of activity for a long time in a real sense, in terms of your own costumes and whatever, that kind of design work. Go on to speak to that.
You know what? Now, sitting here listening to him, I'm thinking in terms of sitting down with him and seeing if I can get him to create me a logo for my my better than the best quality clothing and accessories, you know, because my little logo, man, I tried to go online and find me one, then I couldn't find one. But I thought about it in terms of when I had my idea in my head for a logo for my church, you know, and I had an idea of a pair of hands, you know, with an eagle flying out of it for my logo. And I finally got it done, you know, my logo done. But it was when I ran into this other brother that finally put the right touches on it, on the logo, and made it right. He has since moved to Canada now, but I understand the work that he's talking about, the importance of it, because, you know, you got churches and fraternities and different agencies and things like that put on events and stuff like that are in need of flyers and do flyers and stuff like that, and people that start in businesses and stuff and want to create, you know, their different logos, you know, that will show, you know, that will put that to their, you know, business, you know, some of this eye-catching and stuff like that, you know. And I think in terms of what he's talking about doing, this is the type of things he's talking about doing, you know. And what I was asking him, you know, during the break as well, I was asking Brother Brandon concerning, you know, doing portraits, you know, of individuals. You know, you do those type of things as well, right?
Right.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I think we're showing some of those that you've already done. Are we not? Why don't you say something about some of the more famous of those individuals?
2 of the ones I have is the Barack Obama. Like I said, he's the first black African-American president. I do believe that was my second portrait I did back in 2016. And then my most recent one is Malcolm X. I just did that one for my new show I just had. My first show I had was called Black Excellence. It was last month. And it was my solo show. I had some vendors there, some other black vendors in the community who did clothing, who do food. And so I want to help the community as well as have my first show. And everybody came out and supported. I had told my mom and dad and my mom and sister to maybe bring food for like 30 people. And to my surprise, almost 100 people showed up. So I was ecstatic. I was blessed. And I was
when you
touched with
talk
that.
about graphic designs and designers, what would your community consist of? I mean, the people that do the kind of work that you do, where do you meet, and do you have some kind of organization, or somebody might be able to get in touch with you, and there's how do you get in touch with your peers within that particular profession?
For me, I have my website, rezilientmedia.com, REZILIENT media.com. And for us, you can contact the website, and I can contact you to other photographers, to other videographers. And so right now we're trying to create the full package for somebody, from the graphics, from the photography. So for instance, if you're maybe a new restaurant, and I could create the logo, the flyer, and all that, but you also need the pictures of your staff for the website. We can provide that. Maybe you need a commercial. We can provide that. And so that's my idea, is to have the whole package right now, and just contact us on the website.
And that's a very important consideration, would you say, Pastor?
It is, you know, to have it's an up and coming business concept that he's putting out there, you know, and I keep oftentimes he's over and over, he's talking about, you know, African American, employing African Americans. And, you know, that's a boost to the community. And not only that, Dr. Haynes, not only is it a boost to the community, but it's also shows an image to other young African American males as well as females that, hey, you can do this. You know, I recently went down to the juvenile detention center and talked with some young African American males that were incarcerated. You know, was asking them what, you know, some of the things that they wanted to do and different things. One of them said, you know, I want to, you know, I want to open a business. You know, he didn't know what kind of business, but he knew he wanted to open a business. You know, and it's a good thing. It's a good concept, because what happens is in most cases, we'll go to school and we're trained and we're taught to go to school, get a good education, so you can get you a good job and you can go to work for somebody else. You know, but at the same time, there's also a thought process that says, go and create your own, start your own company and employ somebody. And that's the concept that he's latched on to. Let me start my own thing. That way I can do it my way. And then in the process of my growth, I can bring other people up in that process by positioning myself so that I can employ some other people. And therefore, not only am I benefiting myself, a black man, but I'm benefiting my community as well economically, and also showing a great example that, hey, you can do this or we can do this as well by doing
Very
that.
good. And of course, we've got about 2 minutes, Mr. Van Leer. Why don't you say something in terms of some of your showings, some of the things that you've had an opportunity to present over the next couple of minutes?
So I just graduated from Tennessee State University, and that's a really good connection for me. I've done a portrait for Jesse Jackson when he came there. I did one for Vivica Fox when she came there. I just recently did one. We just found out that there was a Tuskegee Airman